Thank you very much for joining us for this special exclusive interview coming to you from the very office of the chairperson of the African Union Commission, Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma. Her office, as many of you know, is situated at the top of the new building complex of the African Union, built and fully funded by the Chinese government. I'm your host Nkosazana with this first exclusive interview with the chairperson, and Afro FM radio station is grateful to the chairperson for her time and willingness to conduct this interview. Our appreciation also goes to her staff and the staff of the Information and Communication Directorate at the Commission for facilitating the interview with the chairperson. I hope you'll enjoy the conversation. I must extend my gratitude to you, madam, on behalf of Afro FM radio station. Thank you for taking time from your busy to-do list to be with us today. I believe this is your first one-on-one interaction with a local media institution, and we at Afro FM radio station are pleased to open the way in this weekend. Starting with introductory question, many of our listeners know you, your name, your position, but because of the historic nature of this event, please introduce yourself in your own way. You can also get closer and greet many Africans listening to this interaction using as many languages as you can.
Well, I'm Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, Chairperson of the African Union Commission. I'm very happy to feature in the Afro FM, and I hope that the discussions will be fruitful. And good afternoon to all the listeners.
You are now based here in Addis Ababa, the city which hosts the seat of the continental organization, the African Union. Many writers, journalists like myself and other people address Addis Ababa as the political capital of Africa, the center of diplomatic activities. But let our listeners hear from you, the leader of this continental organization, which expression you agree with.
Well, I agree with both expressions. Indeed, it is the headquarters of the African Union, so it is the African capital, and of course, lots of political issues, lots of policy decisions, lots of diplomatic activities take place in this capital. So it's true, it is the diplomatic capital of Africa as well.
50 years have passed since the establishment of the continental institution you are leading. Previously there were secretary generals and now chairpersons, but none of them were women. You are the first woman to be the chairperson of the Commission of the African Union. It was a tight competition and you emerged as a winner to take the post. What was your feeling back then?
Well, I think I was happy not only for myself but for the women on the continent, that eventually the continent has recognized that women are the other half of the population of this continent and they have a lot to contribute. So on behalf of the women, I was very happy, but also I also acknowledged that if it wasn't for the heads of state who elected me, the majority of whom are men, I would not have been elected, which means that we have gone a long way in being conscious about the role of women. Both men and women are conscious of that. So I thought it was a great step forward for the continent and for the African women.
Actually, it's difficult to list down or mention all the background history of Chairperson Dr. Dlamini Zuma in this very limited time frame. But in brief, who is Dr. Zuma and how did she manage to come to this post?
Well, Dr. Zuma is an African woman, a mother of 4 girls, and a freedom fighter who participated in the freedom struggles of South Africa, anti-apartheid. And I was very privileged also to be appointed minister in my own country, Minister of Health for 5 years, Minister of Foreign Affairs for 10 years, and Minister of Home Affairs for about 3 years before I came here. And I'm an activist for both general rights, but also for women's rights.
As you mentioned, your career clearly indicates the many areas you're involved in. Now you opened up this journey towards gender balance at the top leadership position at the AU. What do you think should be done, and what are you doing to encourage other African women to be bold enough to take such leadership positions in the continent and across the world, particularly young women?
I think young women should think that they are as equal as everybody else. They should not think they are inferior. They should have their self-esteem, their confidence. And I think young women have a lot to offer. In fact, if you look at countries where equal opportunities are given to boys and girls, you'll find that more girls do well, go and be professionals. And I think girls, of course boys as well, should go to school. They should be skilled. But I'd like to also encourage young girls to go for science and technology, to be engineers, to be innovators, and to be entrepreneurs, and to be part of all areas of human endeavor, be judges, be in the academic world, be everywhere. We belong everywhere.
This is Afro FM Radio talking to the first female chairperson of the African Union Commission. Chairperson, what is the most challenging part of your authority?
The most challenging, I would think, is those things that I do not have, or we as the Commission do not have a direct influence on. For instance, on issues of peace and security. We do not have direct influence in preventing the conflicts, in stopping the conflicts. We participate, but the people who get involved in conflicts are member states. And whether it's rebels fighting the government, or whether it's within governments or within parties. So it's something that we have no control over, but at the same time we have to deal with the consequences of that. And I think that for me is more challenging, because the things where you have control over, even if you have to spend sleepless nights working, you know that you are directly influencing what will happen. But I also think that for me, I don't look too much at the most challenging. I look at the most exciting opportunities that I see on the continent. Because it's very exciting to be working in this organization at this point in time, because of the progress that African countries are making, but also because of the vast opportunities that lie ahead. I first came to Addis as a student from South Africa in 1976, attending a summit here as part of the African National Congress delegation. And the Addis Ababa I see today and the Addis Ababa I saw then are just two different things. They are two worlds. The progress that has been made since then is enormous. And that's not only Addis Ababa, but generally, if you go across African countries, whether it's Accra, whether it's Abuja, whether it's South Africa, whether it's any country, you will see a lot of progress that has been made. But we think that there is even more to do in terms of modernizing our continent. Looking at young people, we have a very huge number of young people on our continent, and our population is young and will continue being young. So I think we have to put a lot of emphasis on developing the young people, making sure they are skilled, making sure that they can drive the development and modernization, industrialization, infrastructure of this continent. And they can't do that unless we skill them. But if they are properly skilled, I think they can figure out what to do with the rest. And the other big opportunity that I see is the opportunity of women. Because African women have always been very hardworking, but they were never given the opportunity and the capacity to develop to their full potential. And I think if we give them the capacity to develop to their full potential, it means the continent will be working at full speed rather than half speed. But we also have lots of backlogs of infrastructure, which in itself is a challenge, but at the same time is an opportunity. When the Chinese premier was here last week, one of the things we discussed with him was how to integrate the continent using infrastructure. And one of our discussions with him was how to connect all our capitals through high-speed train. Now that's a great opportunity because some years back, 40 years back, or even 30 years back, the high-speed train was going at 120 kilometers an hour. Then it went to 160 kilometers an hour. But we can leapfrog those stages and get into a high-speed train that goes at 350 kilometers an hour. Just as we have done with telephones. We didn't have landlines, very few. But when we got the cell phone technology, we are now the second biggest users of cell phones, second to Asia. So there are opportunities of using technology to leapfrog a lot of the stages that other countries or other regions went through. Even when you look at energy, we have to generate a lot of energy in the coming years. But now there's lots of technologies that didn't exist some decades ago. We now have solar technology, and Africa is one place that has plenty of sunshine, where there is wind technology, and those are clean, they are renewable, which means once you've got the infrastructure, you can sustain because the sun will always be there, the wind will always be there. Of course, there is also hydro. We are home to many rivers, many lakes, many opportunities there. And so, for me, what keeps me going in this job are the opportunities more than the challenges.
You mentioned the significance of infrastructure in integrating the continent. Ethiopia is now building a huge dam, which is said to be the first such dam in Africa. And how do you see its contribution in encouraging other nations to make use of their own resources to transform their economy and the lives of their people?
Yes, I think projects that integrate, that are transboundary, are very important for integration. If we look at energy, for instance, it's going to be very important for us to have projects that can create power pools in a region rather than just in one country. So those are some of the things that we were excited about and are important. But also it's important for us as Africans to contribute to our development, to get our diaspora, to get our local business people, to get our people to contribute to their own development. It's very important. And that, in a way, gives ownership. It also gives sustainability. But it also just gives us pride that we are doing it. And other people are helping us, because we don't say we must shut ourselves out of the rest of the world. The world must help us, but we must also put our own resources into our own development.
Listeners want to know about your Amharic, your experience of Ethiopian food items, Ethiopian music. Tell us a little about that.
Well, yes, I'm very much in love with some of the Ethiopian food. Shiro, injera. I also like the lentils, both the yellow lentils and the red. I also like I can't remember how you call it, but it's a lamb stew that is not pepper, doesn't have pepper in it. I eat that a lot, and I drink moringa tea from the moringa leaves. So I've come to know a bit more about Ethiopian food. Ethiopian dances and music. Well, I can't move my shoulders very well, but but it's I enjoy it.
We understand your activities, but for the ordinary Africans, would you mention some of your specific roles as a chairwoman?
Well, as the chairperson, I'm at the head of the whole institution, but I have, with my team, to organize the summits for heads of state to come here. I have to meet other countries and our cooperating partners. I have to work with all the different departments in the organization, and I have to do the strategic thinking of the organization as well. And of course, sometimes I attend meetings, conferences on behalf of the organization. I do a lot of work internally, but also externally on the continent and beyond. And I sometimes have to also work with regional regional economic communities, the RECs. I have to work with ADB, the African Development Bank, and ECA. So it's a very broad, I'm the legal persona for the organization. So legal issues, I'm the final signatory for legal issues of the organization. So there is a lot that I do.
That seems a huge amount of tasks.
Yes.
So let's move on and let's talk about just a brief comment on the information which links the late Nelson Mandela with Ethiopia.
Well, the late Nelson Mandela, as you know, was one of our very prominent freedom fighters. And in the process of his work as a freedom fighter, he traveled the length and breadth of Africa. But he also came to Ethiopia, and part of his military training was also done here. And he had quite a close relationship with the then head of state, which was His Excellency Haile Selassie. And of course, he continued to have a good relationship with Ethiopia. As you can see, even when he passed on, the Prime Minister was one of the people who spoke. And now the African Union has also named one of the conference halls after him. But he had a very fond memories of Ethiopia whilst he was alive. And Ethiopia not only contributed to our struggle through Nelson Mandela, but through supporting a lot of other activities of our struggle.
Starting from the formation of the Organization of African Unity, OAU, to the current African Union, Ethiopia has been playing the role of a host nation. How do you evaluate the capability and contribution of Ethiopia, its people and its leaders in hosting the continental organization? with regards to its historical significance?
Well, I think it's very historic because it wasn't only just a founder member, but it was one of those countries that mobilized for the formation of the OAU and then went on to host it. But again, the vision that Ethiopia was giving to the OAU at the time is very important. And some of the things that Ethiopia and other countries were saying, but even things that were said by the chairperson in 1963, we still quote because some of them are still relevant even today. We still have to achieve them. So there was a great vision. Of course, Ethiopian people also are always tolerating the traffic and the congestion during summits, but they also get a lot from us being here because we are here, we give Ethiopia very high profile in the world, and so it's a very good symbiotic relationship. It's a good win-win relationship, and we also are very proud of Ethiopia, its historic standing, its great wars in Adwa and elsewhere. So it's a country and people who have been part of restoring the dignity of African people. They are part of our broad and rich cultural heritage. There are lots of World Heritage sites in Ethiopia. Of course, I've also started wearing Ethiopian clothes, which I'm proud of because they make them themselves. Ethiopians make them themselves. So I think there's a lot we can learn from Ethiopia. And of course, there's a lot Ethiopia can learn from other countries as well.
Just to add on that, what is your observation or comment on Ethiopia's effort to bring peace and stability in the continent in general and the Horn of Africa in particular?
Of course, Ethiopia does contribute to start with troops in some of the missions, which are very important. And also as part of IGAD, it plays a very important role in the maintenance of peace in the Eastern region, but also generally in the AU. So I think it's one of those active countries in peacekeeping.
There are lots of reports about regional and continental integration in Africa. How far has it gone? What is its current status? And is there any hope that one day, like the European Union, the United States of America, can we have the United States of Africa?
I think your generation will achieve that and has to achieve that. Otherwise, if you don't, as this generation, achieve that, then you'll be left behind because there is so much to be gained by working together, by integrating. So I have a lot of hope that the young generation will see an integrated Africa. I would say that in some areas we are more integrated, but we need to do a lot more. And young people, there are some young people who are very much interested in integration. They've been contributing to our Agenda 2063, which is really about integration. And one of the things that they say is that they want universities to have the same curriculum, same qualifications, so that it doesn't matter whether you're qualified in Ethiopia or Accra or Nairobi. If your skills are needed in any part of the continent, you should be able to go there without having to be accredited, without having to go through long processes. They also say they want free movement within the African countries. I think that's very important, but we also need to have proper infrastructure so that you can drive from here to Pretoria or drive from here to N'Djamena or get a train from here to Dakar. So we need to work towards that infrastructure, but I think the generation that formed the OAU worked for the decolonization of Africa. We now have to work for integration. Our generation is enjoying the fruits of that generation because now we live in a free Africa except for Western Sahara. The rest of the continent is free, is liberated, but now we have to work so that future generations can bequeath a more integrated continent.
We're getting closer to the end of this conversation. You have now a grand plan for the next 50 years. What is the major element of this plan and how will it be implemented or achieved?
The major elements of the plan are first and foremost the recognition that together we can do a lot more. That if we were working together as one country, for instance, we would be the 10th biggest economy. But individually we are far behind. But also that the most precious resource that Africa has is its people and its young people, and that our major investment in the next 50 years should be in our people. The second major investment should be in producing food for our people, agriculture. We must feed our people. We can also feed and contribute to feeding the world. The third major area is the area of infrastructure. But we also need to transform the structures of our economy, because most of our economies are still growing on raw material. We need to industrialize. And so in the next 50 years, we must see industrialization as a major component. And the infrastructure is a constraint if it's not there. But building the infrastructure will also be part of driving our economic growth. We need to add value to our mineral resources, our natural resources. Of course, we need, in infrastructure, the major priorities should be energy, because we can't industrialize if we don't have energy. And we must, transport is very important, railroad, the ports. Water infrastructure, of course, is very important. And social infrastructure is going to be important as our population grows. We need more schools, we need more hospitals. So these are some of the major elements. But tourism, for instance, preservation of our own environment and tourism, because our tourist attraction goes hand in hand with our environment and our flora and fauna, and we have to preserve all that so that we can have tourists coming, because they are also tourism is a great creator of jobs, but also it earns revenue and it connects people to people. So it's a major element. And also our arts, our culture is going to be a major priority going forward, because that's who we are, that's our soul.
Well, this question is a bit personal, but I believe our listeners love to hear this. Would you tell us something which is associated with your last name, Zuma?
Oh, it's my former husband's name, my children's name, and my What more do you want to hear?
All right, you can talk about your children, a little bit about introducing yourself to our listeners about your previous life.
My previous life, okay. As I said earlier, I am mother of 4 girls, and they are very independent girls, coming from a mother like me. But they are very respectful. They are very well brought up. They are now working in various fields. 2 of them are artists, and in the performing arts especially. The other 2 are working in the private sector, in government. So my former husband is a president of the Republic of South Africa, but that's not him. That's part of my life, I suppose.
Thank you very much for sharing us those personal details. Well, that's all for the time being, and I hope we'll meet again for a similar interview in our studios for you to have a direct experience with our listeners and entertain their questions as well. AfriFame appreciates your willingness and commitment for this first exclusive interview. And as I said, we believe more will come in the future. Thank you very much, madam.
Thank you for your interest, and hopefully you'll come more and more often so that your listeners can have the privilege of hearing from the AU.
Thank you very much, madam.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you.